Okay, so you know those tariffs from the Trump years. We got a ton of listener questions about them, so we wanted to really dig into what their real-world impact was. Did they do what they were supposed to do? Were they ultimately good or bad for the economy?
Yeah, there were a lot of opinions on these. It's
Yeah,
kind of complicated.
definitely.
We dove deep into all the research you guys sent, and we're going to try to unpack
Well, we're
them.
going to try to make some sense of it.
Right.
So maybe we should start with, just what a tariff is.
Yeah, for sure. A tariff is essentially a tax on goods that are imported from another country.
Okay.
So if a U.S. business wants to bring in, say, electronics from China,
Right.
they have to pay a tax on those goods
Yeah.
on top of their regular cost.
Okay. And the whole point of that being to protect certain American industries.
Exactly. The idea is to make those imported goods more expensive,
Right.
so that domestic products become more competitive.
Got it.
For sectors like steel production or agriculture, for example, the goal was to shield American businesses from cheaper foreign competition.
So, protect American jobs, protect American companies. That's the intention.
Yeah.
But when I was going through the research, we keep hearing about this double-edged sword.
hmm
So what's the potential downside here?
Well, one of the biggest concerns that came up again and again is that tariffs can lead to higher prices for consumers.
Oh, so literally at the cash register.
Yeah, exactly.
Got it.
If those imported goods become more expensive because of the tariffs,
Yeah.
then those higher costs are often passed along to the people buying those products.
Makes sense.
And it's not just limited to consumer goods either. We also saw how tariffs can disrupt those really complex global supply chains.
Yeah.
Many industries rely on components or materials that come from overseas.
Oh, yeah. I didn't even think about that.
So, for example, if a U.S. factory needs a specialized part from, let's say, Germany, and there's a tariff slapped on that part,
Right.
suddenly their production costs go up, and that can have a ripple effect throughout their entire business.
And then ultimately back to us as the consumers again.
Exactly. Yeah. And then there's the international angle.
Oh, right, because we're not operating in isolation here.
Right. When one country puts tariffs on goods from another country,
Yeah.
it's really common for that other country to retaliate with their own tariffs.
So it becomes like a tit-for-tat thing?
Yeah. A trade war of
Yeah.
sorts.
No.
And that can have a huge impact on a whole bunch of international markets.
Okay, so zooming out a little bit.
Sure.
After looking at everything, is there a clear consensus on whether these tariffs were good or bad for the economy as a whole?
What's fascinating is that your research really shows how there isn't a simple yes or no answer.
I kind of figured that.
It all depends on whose perspective you're taking.
Okay.
For example, an American steel company might see these tariffs as a positive thing, right?
Right.
They're getting protection from cheaper foreign steel.
Yeah.
But if you're a consumer who's now having to pay more for products that use steel, or if you're an industry that relies on exporting goods and now you're facing retaliatory tariffs,
Yeah.
well, the picture looks very different.
So it sounds like certain industries might benefit from tariffs,
Right.
potentially see some growth domestically, but others could really struggle with increased costs or these trade disruptions.
Exactly.
It really highlights how complicated this whole issue is.
It really does.
Yeah.
Using tariffs as an economic tool is a balancing act.
Yeah.
There's potential for certain domestic sectors to thrive,
Right.
but at the same time, there are serious risks of unintended consequences.
Right.
Higher prices for consumers
Uh-huh.
and strained relationships with our trading partners.
Yeah, for sure.
Mhm.
So just to recap, we've been talking about these tariffs on imported goods and how they're meant to help out American businesses, level the playing field.
Right.
But like we've been saying, it's not that simple. There are potential benefits for some companies, but also risks of higher prices for all of us and potential conflicts on the global trade front.
And I think the big takeaway here is that when we think about these kinds of policies, we have to consider all of the different angles. Who benefits?
Right.
Who might end up being hurt?
Right.
It's all interconnected, and it's important to look at the big picture.
And you know what? I think that's a good place to leave it for today.
Yeah.
So for all of you listening out there, we'd love to hear your thoughts. What do you think about the impact of these tariffs on specific industries? Let us know.
Yeah, share your thoughts.
And until next time, happy deep diving.
Keep on diving.